It's not a talk on David Bowie. But in 1976, David Robert Jones gave a kind of wave, and it kind of looked like a Nazi salute. On the back of his car. Now, David Bowie was a superstar in 1976, and he was currently playing the role, if you will, of the thin white duke, who was a kind of quasi-white supremacist figure. Now, David Bowie was not a white supremacist, he was anything but. He was a champion of equal rights for everyone. I mean, he was open to homosexuality, bisexuality, just as much as he was heterosexuality in the 70s. He had an open marriage with Angela Barnett, better known as Angela Bowie. He was interested in soul music and worked with black musicians, had black or African American girlfriends, lovers, and married Iman Abdul-Majid from Somalia, famously. And they had a child together, Lexi, or Alexa. But David Bowie in 1976, fairly strung out on cocaine, having sort of lived through the excesses of the rock and roll life and all the bullshit that goes with all the management and all the fucking, money moving and the business side of the dirty business side of the industry. He took the role of this kind of fascist rock star, or the thin white duke, right? The European canon is here. And, this obviously was very controversial. He was also arrested on drug charges. There's a very famous mugshot of him from the time. But you see, David Bowie, and this is not a talk on David Bowie at all, but this is how I'm prefacing the talk that I want to give or make or say. This magazine Q, this is after in 2016, after he passed away, it says, "Celebrity Big Brother. Bowie's unfortunate Hitler moment stemmed from his fear of impending calamity," says Dorian Linsky. You see, it's not that David Bowie himself was a fascist and he was strung out on cocaine. Was anyone really so surprised at what Elon Musk did this past week at Trump's inauguration? Obviously it was shocking, but some people were like really just, I thought he was a great man. I thought he was a genius. I thought he was creating these technologies for us to enjoy and to create a so-called better future. Well, anyone who's got their eyes open would have seen and understood a long time ago that that wasn't and isn't the case. Whatever the media, says, or the way that it represents things. And of course, many people have been commenting on social media that, he's autistic and it was just a weird thing he did and it didn't mean anything. Yes, it did. Obviously. And all the stuff with, we have to better regulate AI. And then Trump says, okay, let's go for it. And then he gets, what is it, Stargate or whatever the hell he called it. And then now Elon Musk is angry because it's not his company. Bicker, these men, money, power. And I want to talk about the F word today. Fascism. Franz Kafka, one of my favorite writers, Austrian Jew. His family was killed by the Nazis, right? And this is a very dangerous period we're going through, but it didn't come out of nowhere. And I think, like David Bowie in the 70s and beyond, anyone with eyes open, anyone who sort of thinks and reads and researches would have understood what all of this was. Maybe we didn't all have all the facts in our lap as we're getting them now, these pieces, with Trump coming into office. But it's an awakening for the masses, but actually it's not yet that even, because some people are still in denial. And this past week with the female bishop who not but asked Trump for mercy, have mercy on those immigrants who are struggling, families, good people, they pay their taxes, etc. And he called her nasty and boring. And I thought, boring, I just learned that Elon Musk had a company called something with boring in it, and boring like boring holes, like drill baby drill. Let's bore holes into the earth. Let's completely just withdraw from Paris again. It's like Noam Chomsky has spoken so vociferously, right? About now, Chomsky had a stroke and he's not in the public eye right now, but before this happened, he was talking about this, withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement. Now we're already beyond all these tipping points. Our weather is going crazy. We're having all kinds of issues around the world, all kinds of crazy weather patterns. Obviously, hotter summers and the winters are warmer than they used to be too, obviously. I don't need to go through a list of these things, and that's not my intention in this talk, to state the obvious or overstate it. Nor do I need to preach to the masses, as they say, although I don't know who's watching this one. And it doesn't really, it's not about whether one agrees or not with my viewpoint, which actually I'm just stating facts, I think, not my opinion about them, which doesn't really matter in the long run of anything. We had COVID in 2020. We were lied to about COVID, about its origins, and about many other things, like the social distancing was bullshit, and wearing masks may have been half and half. We learned that spraying our hands with alcohol wasn't really a huge preventative measure because COVID was and is airborne, not spread through hand to hand, which is why you don't get it from eating food. If someone sneezes on your food, maybe it's possible to get it if that's, like just happened, but basically COVID is spread through the air. But so 2020, 2021, we were still in pandemic days, and then the vaccines came, and there was a lot of disinformation around that too, right? And in February of 2022, February 24th, Russia, under Vladimir Putin, invaded Ukraine 2 days before my 48th birthday. And on that very evening, I was setting up this room with my keyboard and guitars and video, and I was ready to do a long improvisation. Because at that time, during COVID, I spent a lot of time alone in the studio. I used to go to, I still do. Actually, this is since COVID. I started doing these talks in 2021 with my tetralogy. By the way, this is leading back to my topic. And the F word, right? I was setting up my room, and the news was on via YouTube, and the announcement of the invasion was made, and I was like, holy shit. And so that became a 30-minute improv called Pray for Ukraine 2022. It's we're creeping up on February 2025, going to be 3 years. Yeah. And since then, what do we have? Nuclear proliferation has skyrocketed. We've had multiple threats. North Korea firing missiles over Japan and South Korea, and Putin threatening nuclear war under Biden. Israel, Palestine, and all the lies and things unraveling and being exposed there. Rise of the Christian right, the far right in Europe, in other countries. Rise of fascism around the world, essentially. We had this recently in South Korea, right? This whole thing. South Korea. And now we have Trump 2.0. And I'm going back to COVID in 2021. So I mentioned this night of the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And as that year went on, I just kept, you could see it happening. Not just Ukraine and Russia and Ukraine, and also the US and their lies and all of their cover-ups that started to unravel a bit before the public's eye, but which again Chomsky had written about that years ago, I had read. But tensions with China, Pelosi going to Taiwan and ratcheting up things around the Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea, Japan remilitarizing after this, and so on. At the end of 2022, I did an album called The World Was Not the Same, and it opened with the voice of Oppenheimer, and this is before the film came out, which I haven't seen to this day, by the way. Before that, I did Kali Yuga and Bodhidharma's Dream, and it was a Buddhist-themed album, but it really sort of moved into the theme of Kali, era of Kali and death and destruction. That was a much noisier piece. I did like my tetralogy of 2021 about COVID, I did a 4-piece, mostly instrumental, mostly abstract instrumental series. And the third part was called 100 Seconds, because that's the doomsday clock. 100 seconds till the destruction of the world. They kept moving the clock forward. They moved it forward again under Trump the first time. And then it was inched forward the next year in 2023 to 90 seconds. So I did a piece called 90 Seconds of Corrective on my album To Be Human, which also deals with AI. And it's not about AI, it's about what it means to be human, but that was in the background of that. And nuclear tensions, and World War III tensions, and US-China tensions, and Russia-US, Russia-Ukraine, North Korea, etc. Now we have Iran and Israel-Palestine and all this. And I've done other things since when the Israel-Palestine conflict, which of course has been going on forever, but when it ratcheted up again in 23, I did some pieces around that. Angels of Chaos deals a lot with that, which I released in early 24. I started doing that album though, recording it in late 23. And I mentioned The World Was Not the Same in 2022. Another album that deals with the rise actually of fascism. And I started this with Bowie's Salute, right? In that photo. And now we have literally Elon Musk in front of cameras and the flag, the American flag, doing Nazi salutes to the world. Richest man in the world. Right beside Donald Trump. And when are people going to wake up? You know, that's what I want to know. I'm going to turn the music off. It's getting too loud. This is the Star Shroud. My own music from the early days. Let me turn that off. So, in late 2022, around the time of The World Was Not the Same, I started composing what would become Lost in the Minotaur's Lair, or the Minotaur's Lair, that piece that runs for 15 or 20 minutes. Maybe it's 18, 19, I forget. But the original version was called Seg Minotaur, artist. Minotaur/artist. Bowie calls him Artist Minotaur, his character. And in that Seg, all the main pieces that you find in the longer version were basically there. And I improvised it, and I did the voice of the Minotaur, because Bowie did not put him on his Outside album. Again, this is not a talk about David Bowie, about the Outside album and the Leon sessions, but in Bowie's Leon sessions, Baby Grace Blue is a murder victim, and she's murdered in the name of art, but there's this whole kind of science fiction-esque background to it, and there's this leader who requires people to wear soul patches, okay? So in my version, I kind of riffed off of this, and the new homelands, right? That there's this new, and now they just want me to be quiet. Something's going to be horrid. That's on the Outside album. In my version, and I mentioned this part, I think, to John in the interview, I had the soul patches became brain patches. And the leader of this group was named Elias Mouse. Elias Mouse and his devious doings. And he made brain patches the law. In Bowie's version, there's a leader who makes soul patches the law in 1994's Leon sessions, or suites, and that's Baby Grace Blues Seg. So in my version, and I was riffing, this is late 22, Elias Mouse requires brain patches. She was convinced that World War III was upon us. Elias Mouse and all of his devious doings. They would be required for all of us. Brain patches. So I've never talked about this before publicly. Elias Mouse, look at the initials, and brain patches. Or I was thinking about Neuralinks. It's obviously a form of mind control. Like AI technology is used for, well, it can be used for the greater good of mankind, or it can be used to destroy mankind, or it can be used to control mankind, in the hands of the 1%, right? I'm thinking the 1%, I'm going back to a Queensryche in the band Queensryche in the 80s, Operation Mindcrime, which was a dystopian album, kind of like Outside or The Wall. And there's this bit about the 1% in there, and you have the corrupt priest and all this stuff in that as well. These are kind of tropes that you find in science fiction and these kinds of albums that are concept albums, which nobody does anymore because nobody has any fucking attention span to listen to more than 3 minutes of a single. Nobody, when I say nobody, I mean the younger generation doesn't buy albums or cassettes or CDs or listen to albums. They listen to things piecemeal, and it's all free and nothing has value anymore. Music doesn't have value anymore. That's another story and it's another talk. But going back to my Minotaur's Lair, and then to talk about some kind of future, you have Elias Mouse and Brain Patches. And in this year's Some Kind of Future, when I was doing my longer improvisations, his name, or the name of this EM character, Elias Mouse, comes back. So he's in there. And now, I sit here, thinking about Elias, Mouse, X. And this is before the so-called Nazi salute of last week. And I published that. It was supposed to be published on Bowie's birthday. I had released it earlier on Bandcamp and YouTube. And John and I did the talk last year in November. Before the elections had been decided, I did the album before the elections had been decided. Before Trump had won. And of course, that's with Musk's backing, his money, that he won the election. I have another story to tell around this. So I just performed, and I just put up my music video for, live video for my performance in Tokyo last Sunday. Nobody came. None of my friends came. When I say none of my friends, I mean there weren't friends who came. I performed with my friends. They were the organizers. The guys I performed with are my friends. And I have friends, but I did not have people. Nobody came to the show, especially to see the show. But I made this video on the shaky iPhone stand, and the video didn't look very good, and I was worried that I wouldn't be able to use it. But if you watch it, you can see that I edited it in various ways to make it visually interesting, and I think it has a very live feel to it, maybe more so than many of the live edits I've done before. But anyway, I shifted the order of the songs around, and I'm talking about this again to go back to my main theme of the F word. I'm not just talking about this haphazardly on the side. It connects with the overall theme of this talk. Well, let me just say a few things about this. When I prepare for live shows, one reason I do fewer of them these days is because it takes me a lot of time to prepare the video and the backing. And this time I was originally not going to do any backing video, but as is often the case if I'm doing an electronica style show, I was going to use backing tracks. I started rearranging things to use, and then I had ideas for visuals, I had visuals for those tracks, and I thought, well, let me use them in a new way. And then I ended up editing the video, and then I ended up just doing video for the whole thing. And then I ended up making new things and doing also the rehearsals in my room, which I put up 2 videos, 15 minutes, 3 tracks each. Actually, I ended up doing some different things during the live show, right? I didn't do, for example, 9 Inch Nails, Non-Entity, my piano version. Instead, I did Red Signals, because I had brought my acoustic guitar. That's an original of mine that I've done before as This Dark Shroud. Or another one I didn't do was, well, I did the Yellow Window, but I didn't put it on the video. But anyway, what I wanted to say was I did a new arrangement of what they did, and the original video had those bits of effectorized bits of Trump in them, because it was during his first term. And when I first wrote that song in 2018, I wasn't thinking about that at all. But what they did, the lyrics took on a new meaning when I made the video in 2019 or 20 with Takeo Udagawa's animation. I didn't want just flashing animation the whole time. Whenever I used his animation to make videos, I always put something else in to get some message to go with it. And so I put in those effectorized clips of Trump signing things, and it just hit me that this was happening again, 2.0, like some kind of future 2.0. I'm Afraid of Americans, 2.0. It's all in my music. And so I thought I didn't, actually the video I used when I was rehearsing in my room, the backing track in the video, the backing track was from 2023's This Dark Shroud version, and the video was the original video that I kind of blended into the rehearsal. But then I had the backing of Zuckerberg talking about doing away with fact-checking, and I had the crowd from the January 6th riots, and I had Trump talking about giving Panama to China at the end. And I don't remember how it happened, but those clips leaked into my what they did file while I was mixing or doing something, and I got the idea to put them in. And then I got the idea to use the video from that as part of the backing, and that created the new one. And then I remixed it and got a new version of it and a new video backing. It was the earlier video backing blended with the clips that I had done for my Afraid of Americans 2.0, which comes from that Bowie One Outside tribute this year, Some Kind of Future 2.0. And when I did it live the other day, going back to the live show and again connecting to my theme, let me preface this by saying no one had come, none of my friends had come to see me perform. I don't go around promoting things because I've gotten so used to people just saying they're going to come and not come that I just got so tired of it that I never ask anybody to come to my shows anymore. Occasionally someone will show up, and that's fine. It's up to people to come or not come. But I don't do it. I just don't do it anymore. And I do less shows for the reason that it takes me so much time and effort. And if it's going to be like a 30-minute off and on show put together with some other bands, I just don't want to do it. But this was my friends who had booked it, and I had 50 minutes or 45 to 50 minutes on stage. And then we had the trio doing improv. So I said yes. So I did this show, and although none of my friends came, a mutual friend came for one of the other performers, who actually was the organizer, someone he works with in his musical project. And one other person came, and he came flat. He said, "Oh, I see that you're doing experimental music." And we chatted just a bit. And before the performance, I had as backing, because the organizer had asked me to do a DJ thing for 30 minutes, not DJ, but to make some tracks. So I did video too, just static images, for my remixes of IAMX, my 2 recent remixes from IAMX, which are on YouTube. From his latest album, I did remixes. And Closer from 9 Inch Nails 1994, and then a piece from Year Zero, actually 2 pieces, In This Twilight, and what is it called? I always say it's from Year Zero, zeros and ones, right? The last track. I'm forgetting the actual title, it's something else. But so when Closer was running toward the end of it, he comes up to me and he goes, "My name is XXX, whatever," and I introduced myself, and he said, "I hear you doing experimental music, and is this Nine Inch Nails? Like, what is this? Is this your music?" And I said, "It's my remix of a Nine Inch Nails." He said, "Oh, I thought I recognized it. I'm really a fan of Nine Inch Nails and Trent Reznor." I said, "Cool. You will probably enjoy what I'm doing tonight, because my set tonight is very much in the vein of that kind of music, especially 90s influenced sort of industrial rock. Tonight," I said, "I'm doing that style. Last year when I played at the same event in the same place, I had done more of an ambient set, and I actually had a cold, and so I wasn't running around the stage the way I did this year. It wasn't that kind of show. It was a much more toned down show. I did a Sakamoto Ryuichi improv, and very ambient and more acoustic. So cool. All right, great. So first act performs, he's there, everything cool. I go on, he's there, cool. And then when I did, getting back to this, what they did, which comes at the end of the video, but actually I performed earlier in the evening. In fact, I shifted the order, as I said, when I edited the video for flow, for the video flow. Midway through the song, which features, the flashing images of Trump and Musk, and this was right before Musk had done the Heil Hitler salute. That was Sunday, the show. It was the 20th in Japan, I guess. Or no, Monday was the 20th, so it was the 19th, right? It was the 19th, so it was 2 days before that happened in America. I noticed that he left. Now, why did I notice? I was on stage. I'm not like looking for people, but I could see him because it's a small enough place, and because there were very few people. It was only 2 people. He was there, and then he wasn't there. Midway through the song, he went, phew, and he left. And I thought, that's strange. And he left, and he didn't come back. And after the show, I said to one of the guys, actually both of them, but one in particular, one of my friends, I said, like, what's that about? And he said, well, in Japan, the news is very one-sided. And I thought to myself, he's a fan of Nine Inch Nails, who did Year Zero, who did that song about we're letting him get away with it, about Bush Jr. stealing the election. And Radiohead did Hail to the Thief, which was all about Bush Jr. stealing the election. They're all very anti-establishment artists. And these are the artists he cited, and he liked Nirvana, he said. And yet he's leaving because I flashed Trump and Musk's faces. And because I sang, they had an experiment, they pulled one over on you. And I thought, wow. Wow. He was offended by this? And yet he's a fan of Nine Inch Nails, he's a fan of Radiohead and Nirvana. I was very perplexed by this. I don't think the song is preachy, but perhaps it sounded that way to him. I think without the images, probably that wouldn't have been the case. I think that made it clearer. Had I done the show without video backing and done the same exact music and the same exact song, I highly doubt he would have left, because there's no mention of any of those people in the song lyrics. It would be much more abstracted without the images, although I did use a sample of Zuckerberg's voice in the beginning, just for a bit, and at the end, but he left even before the end, before the Trump sample came in. So that was a shocker to me. Wow, I thought, And when I did my video I did a talk and stuck it on with my last live video as This Dark Shroud, actually as Marc Lowe, but basically it was a This Dark Shroud style show I did in, I think it was November of last year or something. I think it was November. The last show I had done at Nepo, which is a place I sometimes perform with the video. That was a 25-30 minute short set. And I was talking about the mix wasn't so good, this, that. But I mentioned Skinny Puppy and how they had been very political, and that the industrial music, which also came from kind of punk, that it tends to be anti-establishment, like punk music is anti-establishment, and, to fall a little further on the left than the right, let's say, although I'm certainly not for far left in any way more than far right. I had been and always, for many years have been listening to J. Krishnamurti talk. And the whole thing behind what he says, and he really was not preaching this, man. He was living his so-called philosophy. He embodied it. He embodied it more than anyone I can think of. Is that we're all part of the same species, if you will. And the only way we can live in any kind of harmony and be a plus is if we treat our home, which is the earth, with respect and realize our place in it. And stop this, us and them, divisions, countries, religions. And he was a kind of, like some would call him like a spiritual, he was the anti-guru. But some would say, well, you're a great man. And he would say, no. You're not getting it. He called himself the speaker. He didn't even use I to distance himself from I am this, I am that, putting a label on himself. Or he says, I'm not your teacher. I am not your guru. Think for yourself and don't, be a lamp, be a light unto yourself. It's basically the Buddha's message. It's basically all the great religious leaders' messages. Is not to follow religious leaders, teachers, government officials, etc. I don't mean breaking the law. They don't mean breaking the law and being... There's a... Compassion grows from a natural sense of unity with the world, the earth and the world, and not this capitalistic, competitive us and them, me and you. I've got to get, my AI company, says Elon Musk. We are number one. America's number one. Russia's number one. Japan's number one. Every nation's number one. So that implies that we're going to fight with each other, and egos and jealousy and division and inequality. And the race to what? We're racing to our destruction, right? So Musk is going to fly his buddies up to Mars while the earth burns in a giant fucking flame of, ball of flame, overheating from this whole fossil fuel addiction and nuclear missiles and etc. So the F word, is coming back around, isn't it? Perhaps it's never completely gone. Certainly in some countries it hasn't, but and they, and again, without separating, but I don't like us and them, but there are people who want to create us and them eternally, and fear and fear and fear and fear and fear and fear, and along with that, dangling the carrot and consumerism and all the other bullshit. So Bowie giving the salute, and I'm not an apologist for him, but if you look at him and you look at his music and listen to his music and look at what his career was and is, and of course he was high on cocaine. And how about Elon, ketamine? And Trump gave how many pardons to the January 6th people, including some of the most violent of them. So I'm not going to go into the whole LGBTQ thing. And of course Bowie, Bowie really was not gay. He wasn't even really bisexual. He was experimental, if you will, in the 70s. But, right, he was obviously basically straight married Imani, had children, and after that experimental period in the 70s, he kind of ditched the glam thing. But this is not fascism. This was Bowie's fear of fascism. And what we saw during the inauguration time with EM, Mr. Boring Holes. Maybe he's boring holes into the heads of animals for his Neuralink and eventually humans. Bring us to Mars. That also interestingly connects to Bowie and Mars, right, in the whole. But Bowie's idea of Mars and aliens was that just something foreign, right? And that we are those who feel outsiders, like outside. We're foreign like aliens must feel when they come to Earth. Or like aliens, or let's say immigrants in the US are aliens. Or I'm an alien in Japan because I was born in the US. I'm Gaijin here. It's always us and them and difference rather than emphasizing the sameness of human beings, and how if we don't work together, we're all fucked collectively. And we're going down that road, man. Maybe it's too late. I don't know. Maybe we are the dead already. Whether or not anyone enjoyed my not melodic enough version of it. It's not a pretty song if you listen to the lyrics. And it comes from Orwell's 1984. It's not Bowie put a lovely, put excellent melody to it. Not lovely. I mean, it's a dark song in a way too, in Bowie's version, but it has melody. But, you know, this is 2025, not 1974. And I don't expect anyone to play it on the radio or MTV or even Spotify, whatever. We are the dead. It's the theater of financiers, count them 15 round the table, white-skinned and dressed to kill. And who's in that theater of financiers, do you think? Melting point, indeed. Melting point, indeed. I think that's all I'll say for today.